And we are sitting here with driver of the number 31 MBS Motorsports, Daniel Bois. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us. You had a big drive, you told us. You drove up from Muskoka to Mooresville. How was that?
It was a bit snowy this morning, but the conditions didn't bother me much, so it was pretty good. Just a long drive. That's about it. But thanks for having me on the show, guys.
It's good to have
Yeah,
you on.
yeah. Thanks for joining
Fine.
us. Yeah, we like we said off air. We actually haven't been able to speak before. The first time we've spoke, so it's great to have you on on the show, and I'm sure our listeners are going to love it because we love the Pinty series. Um, just want to talk a little bit to get to know you. Where does the racing come from? Is that a mom side, dad side, grandparents? Where did that seed get planted for you?
Well, I think originally it started was my dad was a big race fan, and my his best friend or one of his best friends when I was growing up raced in the ACT series, the
Mm,
American Canadian Tour, back in the heyday when it was Junior Hanley and Pete
yes.
Shepard, Bill Zardo, all of them. So I called him my uncle growing up, but not blood relative, but he was a very close friend of the family. So it was John Greedy.
Oh, I know that.
So yeah, very from the Brampton area, and we grew up with them just going to pretty much every race. My dad worked on the crew, and then a little later in the my dad's life, I guess you could say, as he
Mm,
got a bit older and he could afford to, he
right.
got into racing himself, and he
Oh,
started
cool.
racing in the Can-Am Midget Series. Um, and we that kind of became our life, was just cruising around and to all the different midget races all across the U.S. and Canada, and then when it became the time for me to hop into a car, I got in a car and did pretty well. And
Hmm.
I did a little bit of go karting, but not a lot. But the midgets were really kind of what you know planted the seed and really made me get into racing. And I got lucky enough to race for some really good owners in that series. I raced for Cliff Walsh, David Balich. And yeah, I had a lot of fun in that series. We won a championship, won a
Nice. Yeah.
bunch of races, and met a lot of my closest friends. From that series. Actually, one of my spotters, James Gray,
That's
him and
cool.
I were. He won the championship, I think, in '09 in that series. Actually, I think he may have won two. Actually, I'm not sure. But him and I used to have just some epic battles
Yeah.
in those cars, and yeah, now he actually spots for me, so it works out really well.
That's cool. Did you
Yeah.
start racing those at one track, a weekly racing, or was it touring series right from the get go?
Yeah, it was pretty much touring series right from the get go. Like I think my first race in that series may have been at Sunset Speedway.
Right.
Say back in 2004, so it was the old configuration.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say that's
Yeah, it was a lot of
pre-pave.
fun, a lot to learn. Like it was a car that I had bought. Um, I worked all summer to pay for it. I think I was pretty young when I bought the car,
Right.
and worked, you know, all summer to pay for the car. Actually, the gentleman I bought the car off was one of the Macris. So Andy Macris' brother, Craig Macris, sold me the car and let me pay for the car throughout the whole summer. So I got to
Wow.
have the car and drive the car, but I was paying him a couple $100 a week to be able to own the
Drive to
car.
own.
Yeah, drive to own. So like a leasing program.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
Right. Right.
yeah,
That's funny.
did that for the first year. And actually, near the end of the year, once I figured out how to set a car up and actually make the thing run properly, we got really fast. And at the end of that year, one of the other owners came to me and said, why don't you sell your car and run my backup car, and
Mm,
it'll be a lot
wow.
cheaper for you. You'll be in better equipment, and then from there on, I started to win and run really
That's
well because I was in a lot better equipment, right?
right. Right.
Yeah.
So let's get into just back in. I want to back up a little bit into
Hmm.
working on setups with those cars. Can you not maybe everyone listening will know what a Can-Am midget is? Could you first describe a little bit about what it is and what kind of horsepower it's running?
Yeah, so really they call them TQ midgets, so it's a three
Yeah.
quarter midget. The best way to describe them is they're kind of like they look a lot like a sprint car, but a lot smaller. So they got the big wings on the top. They run very similar suspension for a lot of the cars. My car in particular was a torsion bar setup car.
Okay.
So instead of your typical coilover springs and things like this, it ran off a shock and a torsion bar. So it didn't actually have any springs on
Hmm.
the car.
Yep. Yep.
And that actually made it a lot like a sprint car just on asphalt. They ran
Right.
back then. We ran Kawasaki 750 motorcycle engines. So they're I want to say they're somewhere around 130, 140 horsepower, but the cars were only 800 pounds. So
Wow. Wow.
very, very, very fast cars. Like I don't know if you're familiar with any of the lap times at Peterborough, but I remember back in that era, we were running them somewhere around 12 and a half seconds around Peterborough
That's
for
fast.
speeds.
That's
Yeah.
really
So
fast. I'm familiar with that track very well.
yeah, so it was unbelievably fast, those cars. Back then they weren't that safe, so had got some nagging injuries from those cars back in the day. They've gotten a
I'd say,
lot better with their safety.
yeah, I'd
Now
say the
now all the
tracks
cars,
aren't
yeah,
super safe either
yeah.
sometimes.
Well, back then
Um,
we didn't even run seats in the cars. We just had a sheet metal pan pretty much,
oh
and
my god, that's
the seatbelts. Yeah,
crazy.
so it's a lot safer now.
So when you get into because I geek out on the technical stuff with that, so it's really cool that you guys ran torsion bars, no shocks.
Well, we
What
ran
was
shocks, no
or
springs.
no springs, sorry.
Yeah.
Um, just say going from a Peterborough to a Sunset to a Flamborough, I'm assuming you probably ran. What kind of how big of swings at the setups are you making through those? Are
Well,
they
it's
are there big changes or is it all just fine tuning changes and with those kind of cars?
they when I switched teams from one team to another, when I got to Cliff Walsh's team, there was huge changes from track to track, and that was one thing that made Cliff so successful. Like his team has won a lot of championships over the years, and it was he's pretty much the person who taught me how to work on anything. And yeah, we'd pretty much start from scratch. Every track had a notebook, and you'd start with your ride heights. Once you got all your ride heights set, then we'd start looking, put it on the scale, start looking at percentages. He'd have different adjustments or different heights that he would want his panel bar at. He play panel bars, front and
Yeah.
rear. He'd play with,
Second time I've heard that. So we sorry, quick.
yeah,
We race with a guy. We race online, and I racing with a guy who races template late models in.
yeah.
And where's Dave live again?
Michigan.
Michigan. And he always says Panhard bar. So it's fine. You're the second guy I've ever heard use it. Anyways, continue. Sorry.
Well, and we'd even get down to we'd have them adjustable throughout the race. We'd have them on. I think we used to use like windshield wiper, not windshield wiper. Sorry, windshield motors
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
window motors. Sorry, to go up and
Oh,
down with them. So yeah, after every caution, you'd make your adjustment under caution for the cars, and yeah,
no
then you start
way.
playing with bump steer, and we were playing with Ackerman. And there was a lot, but because the cars didn't have power steering, you could get a little too aggressive with some of the front end adjustments to the point where you feel like your arms were going to fall off after a race.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's almost kind of reminds me of like IndyCar when they move around their weight jacker or they move.
Yeah.
And because it didn't have power steering, what what would be the change throughout the race? Like with the car, do the cars typically go one way? Do they get looser? Do they get tighter? So what's the change you're making typically throughout a race run?
Well, it really depended on the car. The one year I ran a different style car for him, we would make different adjustments. But my the car that I had all my success in was it was a Dempster chassis, they called it, and it was I had a weight jacker to the right front, and I used to always put every caution I'd put 2 rounds of wedge in, and if I didn't make that adjustment, the car it would just push like a dump truck in the mud for the first couple laps. So I'd always put 2 rounds of wedge in after every caution, and then
Hmm.
4 or 5 laps in, I'd let those 2 rounds back out. So it was
Oh.
there. That car had its own little technique to make it work well.
Oh, okay. Well, so then let's go in. That's a great segue leading into some crew chiefing. So digging into your past, you had clearly have done some crew chiefing. So did other drivers see uh, how good you were at setting up cars and running cars and started asking you, or where did that come about?
No, actually, it's I I don't think anybody knew that I really like to set up cars and stuff like that. And to be honest, when I did crew chief, it was actually um, Joey McComb that approached me about that because he had a young driver coming in, Erica Thiering, who ran I think
Yes.
about a half a season in the Canadian Tire Series or Pinty Series. I'm not sure what it was at that point, but he had her coming in, and she didn't have a ton of experience, so really it was more of a mentoring role. He knew that I'd been a driver coach for many
Right.
years, and I work with a lot of the teams down here in Mooresville, and I do a lot of coaching at CTMP for the Truck Series guys that would come up every year. So he kind of saw that I was in that mentoring driver coach role,
You're a
and
Canadian Josh Wise.
yeah, I guess. I don't work on the fitness side of things,
Right.
but
Okay. To do the fitness side. Right. Right. Right.
yeah,
Right.
but it was a lot about the being mentally prepared for each race.
That's
I
awesome.
honestly, when I crew chiefed on the cars, I didn't really do much for setup at all.
Right.
We were just trying to get her comfortable and build some confidence and just kind of get her up to speed, right? Um,
Yeah.
so that was kind of the limited crew chiefing I had done was that. Um, Now working with the Pinty's team that I work with now, I have a little bit more of a hands-on role, just because I've been
Right.
around for so long now. I kind of know what changes I want in the car,
Right.
so I work closely with my crew chiefs on that and stuff. And I've obviously with the other stuff I do, you're a little bit more versed in different setups for different style cars. So
Right.
yeah, that's kind of the crew chiefing side of things.
Right. And that's that whole dynamic of, I'm sure that's what makes you a great driver coach or driving instructor. I mean, they have lots of names for that, but is you know what it is, right? You've done it before, so it's easier for you to explain it, or you can understand a terminology when a driver gives you feedback of what it is, and work it around. Do you find that your crew will listen more, or do you find, when you're working with other drivers like that, or whatnot, that they'll listen to you more because they, or it's not listening to, it's more having that trust, right? That understanding that, hey, this guy, like, I just do what he says because he knows it.
Yeah, so like somewhat. I do a lot of testing with teams as well. I think I'm more known in the circles that I run with as a test driver than a actual racer. So
Right.
I don't have an impressive race resume compared to some of the guys that I race against in the Pinty series. But what I do have is a lot of experience. I worked with TA2 teams
Mm-hmm.
as a test driver for a bunch of those teams, and spent many hours working on those cars, from the driver's seat, and then working with engineers and stuff like that. I worked as a driver coach and data analyst for the FAF Motorsports team as well. So I have a lot
Oh,
of
that's really cool.
yeah, I've got a lot of experience working with them, and you're pretty much kind of learning on the job. So I'll sit back and be coaching a driver that I'm coaching, but I'll also listen to the engineers talk to the driver and talk amongst each other, and you kind of become a sponge in that situation, and you just, I always say knowledge is power, so I try to take in as much as I can, and hopefully that translates into my driving ability. And we were lucky enough this year to have be asked by NASCAR to be the testing team for the new spec motor that's coming into the Pinty series this year.
Oh,
So we've
that's
been,
really, yeah, that's
yeah, so
awesome.
we got to do a lot of testing with Robert Yates Racing and David Lewis, who heads up Robert Yates Racing. So we've been very lucky to spend tons and tons of time with him developing kind of how, like, they already developed the motor, but how it translates to our cars. So we did a test at CTMP last year with it, and pretty much spent the whole day on track just gathering data and getting comfortable in the car. And the whole day was in the rain, so we learned a lot about our rain setup as well. We tried to take the car to Delaware to do some testing
Hmm.
for the
Hmm.
last race of the year. Unfortunately, we were in our road course car, so it
Hmm.
definitely was not fun to drive. But
Right.
we did still get some valuable data on what the motor would do, temperature
So
wise, and things like that.
what's the motor? What's the biggest differences between the current spec motor and the new one coming in, or what are they looking at to improve?
It's more of a cost thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's about half the price of the other spec motor, um, but it makes the same horsepower and torque curve.
Okay.
So they're trying to be able to essentially mirror the same power and torque as the other spec motor. But so the other spec motor that the Pinty series is running right now is essentially what the same motor that they run in some of the cars in ARCA run it.
Okay. Okay.
They go between that motor, the spec motor, and an Ilmor motor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they've got those two motors, and also a lot of the wheel and modified teams run them
Hmm. Hmm.
the same motor, but they're unrestricted at about 650 horsepower.
Right. That'd be nice
So
to have.
yeah, this motor is more of a I guess you could say a stock platform. It's got stock internals inside of it, and it's closer to an LS motor. So it's pretty much an LS motor. So it's a lot more affordable to run. But if we can keep the horsepower the same and rebuild costs lower, more
Right.
teams will be able to come into the series, right?
Of course. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest expense when it comes to the
Winning.
car.
Yeah, big time winning.
Is got to be the engine. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what now? This may. I think James and I are quite honest with our listeners that we don't know everything, and we're okay to make ourselves sound a little bit dumb. So I might ask a dumb question here. When you
Yeah, no
say
problem.
Yates, I always associated Yates with Roush or Yates with Ford, and I understood that the Ilmores and stuff were based, and the LSs are GM products. I didn't. Are they looking at or am I incorrect?
So yeah, in Robert Yates was primarily a Ford builder.
Mm-hmm.
They merged as Roush Yates years ago, but
Yeah.
Robert Yates Racing is a separate entity that
Okay.
away from Roush Yates, and they pretty much only now build the spec motor
Okay.
out of their shop, which was their previous Cup shop back when Robert Yates was still running his Cup team.
Okay. Yes.
So
Yes.
they run the spec program out of that shop. So yes, it is a GM block
Right.
essentially that the spec runs off of, and the new spec as well. They're both GM blocks, but yes, Roush Yates is 100% Ford builders, but Robert Yates Racing Engines is a separate entity.
Do they work on anything, or is that just do they primarily just do those type of engines now?
Primarily just those type of engines. Yeah, I think they
Interesting.
do sometimes bring in some specialty stuff, but I don't think I'm not privy to that information.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Th- that's a great. That's really cool to know, and I'm glad. Was that a is that a series initiative, or was that pushed in by the teams to do this, upgrade the motors and get into a better area with them?
From my understanding, it's a mixture of all three: NASCAR, Yates, and the team owners. Team owners essentially saying motors are too expensive. NASCAR going to Yates asking if there's a better option, and then Yates working on an option. So between the three groups, they were able to initiate it, and we actually, as MBS, have the first two 525s in Canada. So our two, we actually just started ours last week in our backup road course car. So it's ready to do some testing, and then the our oval car is getting the other 525. So we'll have a mixture of two 525s, and then we'll have one of the older specs in our primary road course car.
So what are the biggest differences between the oval cars and the road course cars?
Well, the oval cars now. Well, actually, I'll go to the
In
road course
particular
cars.
to the Pinty's cars, I would say,
Yeah,
is what
so
I'm
the
referring
road
to.
course cars are designed more as a try to be more 50-50. So it's a full road course build. The chassis are obviously similar, but the weights are more distributed throughout the car. Obviously, big differences in suspension, and the road course car runs a Watts Link rear end setup, where your oval car will be a Panhard bar rear end or
Okay.
rear setup. And then just your obviously your weights. You try to get everything on the oval car to the left side. And then on the road course car, like, you run your battery on the right side to try to, again, balance the weights out.
Interesting. So let's talk about your 2023 season. I think we're looking forward to having you at all of the races in Ontario, road and oval, as I
Yeah,
understand it.
yeah, that's the plan right now. We plan on
And dirt.
running TTMP. Well, I think we'll start off the season at Sunset.
Yeah, yeah.
And that will be with the 525. So that will be kind of like a testing tune for that motor. But we're going to be in the race, and we're going to do our best to compete. I'm I'm a stronger road course driver than I am an oval driver, even though I do have an oval background.
Yes, right.
There's still a ton for me to learn in these cars, so I'll be leaning heavily on my my satellite teammates, which is 22 Racing. So I'll be
Can I-
leaning
You
on.
got some good info there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask can I
Yeah.
actually just ask
Yeah.
a question about the competitive nature of the Pinties? So the, I think sometimes when we watch, we're not privy to, the battles in the back all the time. I mean, they do a great job at trying to cover everything that's going on, but you're always really focused on they're always really focused on the front. I mean, with everything, right? And the racing talent from the front to the back is actually quite stout in this series. But what makes it hard to be super competitive or be at the front in the Pinty series? Because you see good drivers that just have a real hard time making it up to the front. It could be a race to race thing. It could just be a series thing. What makes the Pinties so challenging to race?
There's a few different things there. Obviously, the competition is very high. Everybody is I'd say the top 15 are all unbelievable drivers.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing, I was chatting with J.R. Fitzpatrick about this the other day. When it comes to the ovals, I feel like the car is very, very important. You could miss a setup just by a little bit and be way off. And if you watch the races closely, you could see that, like, an Andrew Ranger, if you saw him at the first race at Sunset, he's one of the best drivers ever to come out of Canada. But if
Mm-hmm.
the car is off just a little bit, he just can't make up the difference to make that car a winning car.
Right.
So the car has to be really close on the ovals, where on the road course, the car can be a 15th place car, but a guy like Andrew can bring it up to the top five.
Right. Because
And
you can muscle it around.
Yeah.
The road
yeah,
course,
there's a
kind
little
of,
different.
right?
Like, some of the road course guys have some tricks, for the way they brake, for the way they use the gearing to help them mid corner, trail braking, things like that.
Right.
There's some things that a road course guy can do, who, an experienced road course racer, that, somebody that's good at both oval and road course, but not great at one. They won't do those things that Andrew does, or Marc Antoine, or LP, or one of those guys that's a really good road course racer.
Right.
They've got these little tricks that can make the difference in a road course.
Right. Okay. So you're going to Sunset to start off the year. Sunset is a tricky little bull ring. I was there last year for the opening race. It was a fantastic night. Um, it's a cool little track. What is the most challenging thing about Sunset?
Um, for me, I think last time I raced there was in the super late model, and I found just hitting the exit of 4 right. I find if you just don't, that corner to me is like, you kind of want to late apex it and
Mhm.
get a really low exit off of 4. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I
I
know what
find
you're saying,
if you're a bit too high there, you're kind of just chasing it up to the wall, and I feel like you're scrubbing off a bunch of speed there. So getting the
That's
car to
like
work the
right.
right
It's the
way.
top part of the D, right? Coming, but like if Sunset looks like a capital D, you're coming over the top to back to the straight part of um of the D. That's really cool.
Yeah, and just trying to
Okay.
get the power down as quick as possible there. So the quicker you could get it straight, the quicker you could get back to the throttle.
Yeah.
That, yeah, that's just my opinion. Some guys who are more experienced there might say something different.
No, I like to hear what we're like.
Oh
I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
know what you got to say about it. That's what it's so interesting. I love hearing how technical you are, and my mind's going a million miles an hour with 1,000 technical questions.
So Daniel, so for out of the 2 road courses, it looks like you're going to be running at CTMP and at Toronto. Which one are you looking forward to the most out of the 2, and why? What are some of the differences you're expecting?
Well, so CTMP is, I work there pretty much 5 days a week during the summer. So to me, that's home. I'm more comfortable there than anywhere else on the track. I probably do 5,000, 6,000 laps a year on that track.
Right, so that's
So
Jealous.
yeah, for me, it's a comfort thing. Like, I actually even have the track map tattooed to the inside of my arm. So,
oh no way,
um,
that's so cool.
yeah,
That's the bread and butter. Yeah.
exactly. I've got a lot of experience there, and it's been a good place to me, for my career, and I put food on the table for my wife and kids from that
Yeah.
place. So it's got a special. So that place to me is my crown jewel.
Awesome.
Toronto last year, it was my first time there. Actually racing there. I've been there a million times, but it was my first time racing there, and I didn't know what to expect. But we were really fast, so I was pleasantly surprised. Like, with I think about 10 laps to go, we were running 4th, and just somebody got into the back of us and put us in the tires and ate.
Yep. That was crappy. Yeah.
Yeah, luckily I didn't stuff it in the tire. I just kind of clipped it with the rear.
Yeah.
And kept going, and we rebounded to finish 7th, which Some people would think that's pretty good. I was more excited about a top five. So
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
it sucks. Luckily enough, the guy that got in the back of me, he apologizes, and to me, that's the respect thing is everything in this series. If you do make a mistake and you come talk to the guy,
Yeah.
that means that goes a long way.
Right. Yeah.
Changes my mindset when I race him the next time. I'm not going to be mad at him, and I give him the space he deserves.
Yeah. There's some dynamic on the track with who's you're going to be cooperating with and whatnot. And I mean, you're going to be getting a nice mix this season coming up.
Absolutely.
Who are you looking forward to racing against the most, and who are you looking forward to working with the most?
Well, because of our, we have a bit of a satellite relationship with the 22 racing team. They prepare our cars and help us with setup and things like that. So, I look forward to working with Kyle as much as I can. Kyle did some testing at the end of the year at CTMP, and I was there with him, giving him a hand. And, we're going to be going over some data over the next couple months now just to get him ready if he's able to make his first start there. I don't know if they've got their plans finalized yet, but we'll make sure he's as ready as possible.
Awesome.
I would chat with Traden pretty much after every road course and just kind of, talk to him about what he felt and, what I would do in certain situations. He's got more talent than pretty much anybody out there. So he'll figure it out. He just needs to, you give him the right, try to give him some direction, but his dad was a phenomenal road racer. His brother is a great road racer. So he doesn't necessarily need my help, but he's the kind of kid that will still take the advice if you're willing to give it to him. And then Tag is great to chat with after every race because even though I'm a driver coach, when he's got way more experience than I'll ever have. So anytime he talks, I listen. So working with those three guys is always awesome. So yeah.
Well, that's great. We love watching all those guys race, and it's great to hear that you have such a good camaraderie and relationship with the drivers in the paddock. Talking about jobs, you work for Road Sport Aerial and Road Sport Auto Group, and you guys sell Ariel Adams and Janetta G56 GT4s and
nice.
GTAs.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about that? I've only ever seen the Janetta G56, the GT4. It was Pirelli World Challenge. It's World Challenge now. I've seen that there, but I've never seen the Ariel Adams up close. Tell me about that business and how you got into that and what you actually do with them.
Yeah, so I have a few different roles with them. I started off with them, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. I was contacted by a gentleman, Larry Caruso is his name, and he's actually in the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame. He raced some CASCAR back in the day. He raced Rossman. I can't even say it right now. Rossman Porsche Series back in the day.
Oh, wow!
And Larry approached me because he knew me as a driver coach at the track, and we'd worked together previously. And he was starting this program with the gentleman, Chris Gauthier, who owns the Road Sport Auto Group. They were going to be the Canadian distributor for the Ariel Adams. So they approached me because the old adage, win on Sunday, sell on Monday. They thought, let's start racing these cars, and if we win some races, people are going to think they're fast, and hopefully we could sell some cars. That was kind of the idea behind it. So we started racing the Ariel Adams in CASC regional racing out at Motorsport, Shannonville, Cowabogey, things like that. And pretty much any class we put them in, we could win. So it was pretty good. I think I won a few championships in those different series.
Makes them easy to sell.
Yeah, from I think we did GT, GT3, GT2, and now with the Ginetta, we brought those in last year. Now we're up to a GT1 car with the Ginettas.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it works out. So my role with them was strictly as a driver. I'd show up and race the car and um, try to win with it as much as best as I could and show the car well and not wreck equipment.
That's cool.
And it worked out well. And then last year they offered me a management role there as the motorsport manager for the company. So I try to juggle my other 4 jobs that I have. So, but we do our best to sell the Atoms and sell the Ginettas. And yeah, the Atoms are a lot of fun to drive. The Ginetta is, it is a great car. It's your typical British sports car where it pretty much does everything the right way.
Yeah, and there's a big following. You got Janetta Juniors, and there's lots of Janetta classes, and I know you're right. It's run big in British GT.
Yeah,
Does
SRO as well.
yes, yeah. Does that qualify in the Fell series here too?
The GT4 should qualify. No problem. I've actually chatted a bit with Chris By, who runs a series, and he'd love to get a car up here to have it run in the series. We would like to do some stuff with that car in the FEL series. It's just the cost of racing the car.
Mm-hmm.
When we're in the business of selling it, it doesn't offset. It doesn't offset well.
Right.
Now that I'm in the management role, I see the numbers, and I'm like, if I go race one weekend, we need to sell this many cars to be able to make that money back. So, really, what we do with that car now is, because regional racing is more inexpensive to run, we could show the car off that way, and with many different track days, we could do that as well.
Is there any companies that you guys aspire to, like a FAF or an AIM Autosport or somebody like that? Is that kind of what their direction, hopefully, maybe one day will be?
No, to be honest, like FAF is so big and so professional. They've won everything.
Yeah. I got a picture of them. I took from last year at CTMP doing a burnout on pit road. I love that car, the plaid Porsche.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. FAF's an amazing company, and the way they run their motorsports is world class. With us at Road Sport, to be honest, it's more of a it's a hobby for Chris, who owns the Road Sport Auto Group. Obviously, we want to sell cars enough that you make a little bit of money to offset your costs and things like that. But Chris is just such a car enthusiast. He said, listen, if we just want to be able to be involved in motorsports, really. So let's pay the bills and make sure my salary gets paid and things like that, and we get to have fun with cars, and that's really all it's about. Obviously, you would like to make some money in it, but motorsports is a hard business to make a ton of money in, unless you're one of the top 1%, right?
Yeah, well, they say do you know what's the quickest way to make a small fortune in racing? Start with a big fortune.
Yeah, my dad always used to say, to make $1 million in racing, you have to start with 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I love that, hearing that love of motorsports. Jordan and I have been talking about it recently. Just our love of motorsport and all types of motorsport. We're not just oval fans. We're not just Canadian oval fans. We're everything fans. We love it from here to there. Anything on wheels, if they're racing, we're kind of watching and paying attention to. And I think for a driver, when fans hear that too, you'll make yourself more endearing. Like, big fans time. Are going to want to cheer for you. They're like, yeah, he's the every guy. He's doing what we would do if we could, or and that's really cool. So this is a fantastic conversation, Daniel. We won't keep you much longer because we know you had a long drive, and this was a lot of fun. And I hope you'll come on again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like you said. It's when you're passionate about something, you could go on about it for hours. I'm definitely passionate about motorsports because I live it every day, and I'm the lucky one of the lucky ones that gets to do it as a job, and
Yeah,
and be able be able to pay the bills and stuff
that's
like that.
so
So
cool.
it's yeah, pinch yourself every day, especially when you come from a middle class family that doesn't you know didn't really fund your programs, right?
Right. Yeah, of course. I mean, we're and seeing the fruits of your labor and work. We had Sam Fellows on, and
Hmm.
Sam, said, "Oh, I have these sponsors because they were sponsors with my dad." And I said, um, people don't work with people and spend money on people they don't like, especially in motorsports. So when you see the partners and good partners that drivers have and the sponsorship, and through thick and thin those people are still there, then like those are the good ones, those are the good drivers. They're not they appreciate it, they've worked hard for it, and I mean,
Well,
fans see it and appreciate that stuff.
yeah, and you appreciate, like, even just the small victories, you end up appreciating way more. Like, even our NASCAR team, our MBS, the two owners of the team are those guys. They don't do it to make money. They started this team 100% because they're my friends, and
Yeah, that's
they
awesome.
said, we want to go racing with you, and the only way we're going racing is doing it. And those two guys fully fund our program, and they spend a ridiculous amount of money on a hobby, but
Right.
they do it because of the love and the passion. They could be spending it on a cottage or a golf membership, but
Right.
they
Yeah.
they want to put it into motorsports. So
Well, and you said it too there, like the little victories that people don't always see, and it reminds me of at CTMP last year. Rick Ware Racing gets a lot of crap, but they run in the IMSA series, and a driver and fellow podcaster, Ryan Eversley, uh, was running in the NSX with them, and I got to talk with them a bit through the weekend, and I had remember overhearing him say that if they could get a top 5 that weekend, they'd be happy. And there were 6 cars in the class, and they ended up getting a third.
yeah.
And you would have thought he won the championship, and I was so happy for him. And when you can see how hard the work, and you just see that reward, it's awesome. We really are going to look forward to cheering for you this year. I know we're not supposed to be biased, we actually cheer for everybody. If I'm going to be honest,
Yeah,
we've
really.
just
Yeah.
we're race fans, so like people always go, oh, who's your favorite, and I go, I just want a good race, I want good, hard, clean racing. And we're going to be watching you pretty close this year, so good luck.
Awesome.
Can't wait.
Oh, thanks, guys.